Ruben, 7 and 9 points for this homestand. Safe to say that at least the side are getting results at the back end of the season?
Yeah, look, big positives. Obviously, it's been a really good week for the group, and none more so than our fans and our members. Like I keep harping on about, they've had a really difficult. I wouldn't even say this year. They've had a really difficult few years at this club. But through the turmoil, they keep turning up and supporting their team. So it's nice to get them a couple of results, and they deserve it.
Just sort of tricky conditions as well, the pitch with a lot of traffic and all that. But one of the positive things is probably from the attacking side, I think 30 shots on goal. Is it more so that the opposition were trying to sit back more, which allowed the boys to attack more, or was that a concerted game plan to really sort of, shoot more?
Look, I think a mixture of both. They obviously, will set up very counter-attacking today, and they're always a threat, to be honest, with Costa up top, because he's a wonderful footballer. He's very dangerous even when they don't have the ball. So I think that definitely probably blows out that stat. But I would say that it's not for the first time this year, not by any stretch, that we've dominated the game in nearly every metric, and it's nice for the boys to get rewarded for it, especially with a clean sheet. Those two young centre-backs have worked really hard for that tonight against a top striker, and it just shows the progress that they've made as young individuals, and it shows the progress the team's making and the improvements we're making. So, yeah, really positive performance and totally deserved the win.
Asuma, he again, another sort of a tiles performance sort of up front. Any news on whether he's looking at staying, or whether it's where is he at the moment as far as contract?
Yeah, look, you'll have to speak with Zach Anderson on that one. I remember 12 months ago watching an interview with Ross Aloisi, sat in this chair. Zach is the head of recruitment. I'm sure he'll make the decision. All I can do is try and recruit a player like that to the club with the funds that I have. Fantastic player, fantastic person, someone who's really lifted the fortunes of the team, and that's what happens when you have a number 9 who's above the level or at the level. And we spent the first half of the season with the young Thomas Waddingham leading the line, which in all seriousness we know is not enough. We tried to attract a few different players to the club in that first window, but we didn't have the funds, and those budget cuts really hurt us. So we went through the process of developing Tommy, really coaching Tommy. I think he'd only had one A-League goal before I came to the club, and then playing our model and this style of football, he's gone and scored a lot of goals, and he's got the move he deserves, and that gives us the club some finances to spend. I was able to spend a portion of that on Abubakar, and that's what happens when you have the ability to sign players.
The other young players that come through the system is Sam Klein. How have you seen his rise? Obviously, we knew he was a good player at NPL level, but take that next step into pro football and show him where he's at, especially that Perth game where he's really taken off since. How have you seen his progression?
It's another interesting one. Kleiny, like I said, I drove down the Gold Coast Highway a few times in traffic to go and watch him with Scotty McDonald's Gold Coast Knights, and Scotty runs a really tight ship there, and it's a really good unit. So it was an easy place for me to look, and I found out that he was actually at the club previously and was released. So I was very surprised by that, because when I watched him play, you saw a young man with an exceptional attitude and appetite for the game, and there's a lot of there are a lot of flaws, or let's say holes in his game. Obviously, not being at a professional football club, it's hard to generate that intensity at NPL level and those moments, because it's less structured and tactical. So it's been a long process to try and it still is, it's a work in progress to try and get Semi to understand positioning and spacing in those half spaces, especially when he's attacking, and when's the right time to come out and link the play, and when's the right time to go beyond. And he's an absolute joy to coach, to be honest, because you can just see him really growing into his game, and he's at that right age now that he becomes another saleable asset for this club, which is something that we didn't have before this season. But we've gone on and we've sold Tommy. Lucas Harrington's another one there's a big sale pending there, and we'll be able to bring more resources to this club, which it needs. And I think Sam Klein's another one. I think he's got a future. I can see him playing in some of the probably the second tier top leagues in Europe, in Belgium and the likes, Norway, that type of league, even Holland, where it's tactical but also physical. And I think that will come for him in good time if his performances continue the way they are.
Just I guess the elephant in the room, New Zealand reporting replacements for the Brisbane Roar head coaching job. For you, with 2 games to go, how do you block that out as far as getting the side maybe one more win this season, plus as well a Australia Cup playoff up in Darwin?
Look, it's just noise, to be honest. It's part of the game. You know, when you take these type of positions, you shoulder the responsibility and the you know, you shoulder the heat for the club, and you're at the coalface, and that's something that I'm well aware of before I took over this position. Like I said, I think I was the 6th coach in 12 months. And if you look at the way some of the players left the club, they've probably got similar frustrations and similar issues with, you know, not having the resources that you probably need at this level to compete. You know, what I like to try and do is focus on the controllables. And yes, the budget cuts hurt us in that first window massively, and yes, we suffered with only 2 of our first 8 games at home. Yes, we suffered without having pre-season fixtures because we can't afford to travel. All of those things, but what we do focus in is the controllables. How many young players can I attract to the club and develop and turn them into saleable assets? How do I bring money in the door? How do I create an environment where my senior ones feel respected and loved and cared for, even when they're in the wilderness at times and not sure about what's next? It's to try and create stability, to try and grow the team, to try and, you know, cultivate an environment where people care for each other and are improving individually and collectively. And like I said at the start, I think sometimes I say things and people think I say it for the sake of it, but I knew that it was going to take, you know, more than a few windows at this club. You could see even in that first window in January, after those budget cuts, you know, pre-season, you could see once we had a little bit of money to spend, obviously got Henry Hall back on loan. I was able to, you know, convince him to secure an extra year at the club before he left. But I didn't want to let Henry Hall go. You know, make no mistake about that, that's financial, to save a little bit of money so we can, you know, try and keep the lights on. So, look, Henry Hall comes back. We're able to sign a Boubacar in that window, bring a young player like Nathan Amenatides to the club, which helps, a little bit of depth there, and try and squeeze the most out of the cattle that we do have with those few additions. You see an improvement, and, you know, I'm not sure about exactly what it would be, but I'm sure, you know, from the transfer window on, we've probably been a mid-table team or close to, and considering how many young ones we're developing and considering how much we're without, I think that's a really big achievement for the club. So, you know, I'm really proud of my players and my staff for that.
League season concludes next week, all but secure as far as the dreaded wooden spoon. Do you feel like right now that you have the strongest possible squad, like without injuries other than the long-term injuries, that to finish off the season on a positive? Yeah,
well, look, you know, again, that's another thing I have to manage here at this club. We don't have the luxury of resources and a gym at the training ground, and, you know, top food environment, and you know, a top S&C team, and you know, we don't have that the framework in our coaching staff. So that's something I have to manage now. What I can say is when I came to the club, there were a lot of injuries to the club, and they had lost 7 of their last 8 games because of it. Because you can see with this cattle, if you don't keep your best ones on the playing pitch, you're probably going to suffer massively. At the start of the year, you know, with the changes to the squad, yeah, it was probably a little bit of a new group trying to gel together, but when you're without, it's very difficult. What I can say now is that we've been able to, you know, create a high performance environment even without having the resources and the structures to do it, and that's something that my staff manage really well. So I'm proud of, we get to this point of the season where we've played a lot of games back to back, and you can see players backing up, getting through the games, sticking to the way we play, continuing to get the ball down irrespective of, you know, let's be honest, the pitch was farcical for a football game, but, you know, the mentality of my group is to get it down and play, whether that's through a 17-year-old centre-back, through a high press, it doesn't matter, or a low block stepping well into their half. The mentality's there and the identity's there, and I'm very, very proud of my players and my staff to come out the other end of all that turmoil and show this type of resilience, and I think that'll put the club in good stead down the track.
Thank you, Ruben. Good luck next week.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it, Adam. Thanks.